The partners in death have come a long way together, but now the road seems to bend and twist forever. Like a snake. Welcome or welcome back to the Butter Bunch. My name is Jacob Butter, and I'm back with another Dragon Ball What If discussion. It's a little cliche to say I didn't expect this particular series to do so well, but it's more true here than with the Raditz scenario. Why, back in July when I had to step away from these videos a bit for personal reasons, we even got a message on our Twitter requesting part 3 of this installment. Hopeless romantics indeed. But before we move on, I need to address a few concerns raised in our comments. Don't worry, I'm not going to read every single one like I used to. There's just some points I'm going to have to clear up. For example, Ambi Past Studio Production got me to look into Suno's age, because apparently she was actually 3 years younger than Goku rather than just 2. I have since checked my sources plus a few others around the place, and I found the debate really centers around how old Goku was. Apparently he was actually 11 when the series started, rather than 12. However, by the time he meets Suno in canon, the Dragon Balls are active again, meaning that a year has passed at least, which makes sense considering how much time was spent around Roshi's training. About 8 months or so. So, the age difference made the same after all. I really need to ask you guys where your sources are from, because the same thing happened with Raditz's power level a few months ago. I also found out that Bulma was apparently 15 in the manga instead of 16. Considering what they did to her, I prefer the older figures overall. It doesn't make much of a difference, but yeah. Secondly, I'm seeing more and more people make comments that they're interested in a what-if story about Chi-Chi either travelling with Goku, studying at the Turtle School, or simply becoming a Z-Fighter. So, I'll announce it now. That's my next story. But for now, let's get back to the reason you came here. Part 3 of What If Goku Married Suno. In the last part, that first fight in Z did indeed end rather differently. Thanks to the fact that it took place near West City on the other side of the globe, it was nighttime when Raditz attacked. And with the moon out, well, you can imagine. The new Great Ape ended the lives of both Goku and Suno, and actually escaped with his life with a terrible injury to his arm, courtesy of Piccolo. Uzaru Raditz was still fairly primal, as was hinted at in the original series, but even he had a sense for self-preservation, fleeing the scene and passing out in the nearby mountains, grasping his arm in pain. At the same time, Goku and Suno arrive at King Yema's check-in station, guided by Kami. Both of them are granted access to Snake Way and set off to find King Kai and train for a possible second strike by Raditz. Before they leave though, Suno does ask if there was anyone by the name of Son Gohan that had recently arrived. King Yema flicks through his book. There's a Son Gohan here that died about 15-ish years ago.
Oh yeah, that's my grandpa. I wonder if he's around.
There is no time, Goku. It will take you the best part of a year to run the whole path. Possibly more.
More? But then we won't be back in time to stop Raditz!
I will gather the Earth's strongest defenders and train them to the best of my ability, as I once trained you, Goku. They shall hold the fort until you return.
In that case, tell them not to wish us back with the Dragon Balls till we finish our training, okay? No, he won't. He's got our friends. They'll take care of him. We've got to do this. For all of them.
Suno reluctantly agrees, and they set off on another adventure together. While that's going on, Kami descends to Korin's tower and recruits Yajirobe to gather the usual suspects. But it's the middle of the night!
Just go, you lazy bum. Do what the big guy upstairs needs you to do.
With a little persuasion, that part goes pretty much like in canon, maybe with a few time differences. Morning does eventually come, and Raditz transforms back into his original form. He cautiously flies across the rest of the mountains, landing just outside the perimeter of Ginger Town. It doesn't take long before a man spots him crawling his way to civilization and calls for an ambulance. Now you might be wondering why they recognize him from the attack on West City. Firstly, not everyone wanted the news immediately. Secondly, he was a giant ape for most of that. Thirdly, he looked way more like a possible victim of an attack rather than the source of the destruction. The other big question is why didn't he call for his ship? Well, because Raditz is more shrewd than the fanbase gives him credit for. He knew that after months of space travel to get to an Imperial hospital, even if he cryogenically froze himself, he ran too much of a risk of losing his arm. he decided to give Earth medicine a try. Weaker species did tend to put the most focus on healthcare after all. Though the Saiyan could not know this, time was of the essence. By this point, all the living Z fighters had been gathered and been acquainted with the rules of Mr. Popo's training. Beware the pecking order. Jokes aside, they could all sense Raditz since he didn't know how to hide his energy, so at least could keep tabs on him. Going back to the world map, Ginger Town isn't that far away from Korin's tower, so they could easily team up to defeat him if he started anything. The effort to collect the Dragon Balls was underway too, leaving baby Gohan under the care of Punchy and Dr. Briefs, so Bulma could gather the Dragon Balls and bring back any lost lives from the last attack, or any further ones, except for Goku and Suno as that request was acknowledged. So all in all, everyone was waiting for Raditz's next move to know how to handle him. That is, except for one person. Piccolo had stalked the Saiyan and soon found him already recuperating in the hospital. He could just end him right there and there, but there was no honor in such a cheap victory. He wanted to fight him once he was out and ready to end the threat himself. Careful Piccolo, your Vegeta's showing. So, Raditz began his recovery, the Namekian found himself a good wasteland nearby and began his training in solitary. Well, he duplicated himself a few times, but you know what I mean. And so, about a week passes. Raditz's Saiyan biology allowed him to heal faster, but having gone through normal Earth medicine, his bones only just set, and was advised by the doctors not to take off his cast. One of said doctors was unlucky enough to happen to ask Raditz how he was feeling on one particular morning.
Why, I feel great! Better than ever! Thank you, Doctor. I shall be leaving soon.
I don't advise that, Mr. Raditz. But either way, before you go, there is the matter of your bill to settle. This stumped the Saiyan. There was no way this planet took credits from the Frieza Empire. That didn't matter, as this planet would soon belong to the Frieza Empire anyway.
If the matter of my payment is so trivial to you, you may take it up with my employer soon enough. Lord Frieza will be delighted to oblige.
This threat worked on other worlds, but the Doctor just stared back in utter confusion. Raditz sighed and did his best to explain who he was, who Frieza was, and how the Earth would soon be under new management. The Doctor grows increasingly more impatient as the story continues.
Also, if this were in the anime, this is the part we would find out about Frieza for the first time. It's good for the audience as well.
Mr. Raditz, I must ask you to stop. We shall require you to pay with normal zenny and stop with these ridiculous fantasies. Raditz gets out of bed, rips off his cast with his other arm, and while the Doctor looks on in horror, he charges a vacation delete and blows the Doctor and his surroundings to smithereens. He then slowly rises out of the building as the top floors collapse and crash to the ground.
Keep the change!
Of course, it wasn't long before news of an explosion in Ginger Town reached Piccolo, who had been keeping regular tabs on the area. He arrived on the scene as Raditz was taking his healed body for a test drive, or rather, a test joyride, blowing up buildings and people left, right, and center. One particular Shining Friday of his was blocked in the last second by an unlikely savior, at least at this point in the story. Looks like that arm's doing better. Let's fix that. Now here's the question. After just 1 week of intense training, does Piccolo fare any better alone against Raditz? Nope. He didn't last long at all, even after coming up with a plan. Raditz was just way more than he could handle. However, all good plans come with a backup. I guess I wasn't the challenge needed after all. What was I thinking? After defeating your brother, what chance did I stand? That was it. He pushed the Goku button. And yes, he should have did that. Raditz folds his arms and laughs heartily.
Kakarot? What a joke! He was more of a disappointment than you are, Namekian.
Yeah? Well, that man is always ready for another fight. Trust me, I know. You'll find out soon enough. Raditz then scoffed and reminded Piccolo how he'd ended his brother's life himself, and there was no way he'd ever be seeing him again. Piccolo just chuckled loudly and explained to Raditz all about the Dragon Balls. If you're wondering why he just blurted this out, he did more or less the same thing in canon, and this time the notion piques Raditz's curiosity even more.
Well, that's that. Looks like I have something else to search for after I kill you.
Oh, no you don't. The Dragon Balls are tied to the one who made them, the guardian of this planet. Unfortunately for you, he shares a lifeline with me. I go, he goes, and we take the Dragon Balls with us.
Raditz considers if the Namekian was bluffing. However, he had heard about his race and a few stories of their power. He decided it was much better to use him to find the balls, and perhaps keep him around.
Hey, I didn't say I knew how to find the things. They're scattered across the world. You've got as much chance of finding them as anyone.
Then you're useless to me!
Again, he raises his hand and charges some ki. Piccolo's knowing gaze makes him reconsider. Even if he was bluffing, Raditz could just kill him later, or exterminate the planet. Instead, he just gut punches him and leaves, off to do what Vegeta Nappa never did, actually make a plan to get the Dragon Balls. Meanwhile, Kami has seen all, and contacts his other half completely outraged.
Piccolo! What on earth have you done? I've bought you time, you old fool. You're training up some warriors, aren't you? Well, now you've got more time to beat those weaklings into shape, while that moron flies around aimlessly for the Dragon Balls he can't find on his own.
And it's here where Piccolo was actually wrong. For Raditz did have one thing he could do. Be the sneaky and cunning Saiyan he's now known to be. Having exhausted his luck with the cities, predicting this daytime round of wanton destruction would actually get him recognized this time, he flies around looking not for the Dragon Balls themselves, but for an off-the-grid town he could squat in for a bit and gather some intel. Stepping out of the story for a second, this would be the time in the anime where the training arc with Piccolo and Gohan would normally go, as Goku and Suno run Snake Way. Instead, during this time, Raditz flies around the planet on a solo mission, interacting with locals in faraway places as word about him slowly spreads, and we cut from both perspectives regularly. Speaking of Snake Way, Goku and Suno have made steady progress together. In fact, Suno actually stops Goku from falling into Hiffle and meeting Goz and Mez, so they've gained even more time now. Their only real detour is the encounter with Princess Snake. The princess now has to contend with an oblivious Goku and an all-too-suspicious wife of his that barely touches her plate during her banquets. Come on, Suno. She killed everything there with her bare hands, including the bare hands. It's a pun! But all the same, the partners in death both watch the tango routine in front of them. Surprisingly, both of them are equally confused. There isn't much tango in West City or Jingle Village, so Suno missed out on this dance craze too. Honestly, much like Chi-Chi, Suno and Goku both have rural upbringings that gave them some common ground, even though in this story I did change that for the pair of them. Anyways, afterwards they do take a refreshing bath together, during which Suno is a little embarrassed, while Goku is not the least bit phased.
I'm not sure what the big deal is. I see you like this all the time we do that special training where you...
The subject was dropped and never raised again. When whatever passes for nighttime falls, Goku still takes a sleeping potion, but Suno only pretends to. Thus, she is able to see the princess spying on her husband's dreams. Dreams of Gohan, her, and the life they both left behind. There's also the nightmare Goku had about Gohan getting attacked, this time by Raditz, instead of the confusing part where Vegeta and Nappa show up even though Goku's never seen them yet. I don't know what that was either. Princess Snake rounds on Suno, right before getting a sucker punch to the chin. The jig is up. The palace and Snake revert back to their original form, digestive acid forming above and below. Suno grabs Goku and flies out with the pair of them. Yes, by this point they've both been taking turns carrying each other and mastering flight, although Suno wasn't as fast as Goku. The Snake was catching up quickly, and so, in a Toriyama-style gag move, Suno holds up the sleeping Goku with both hands like a cloth-presenting matadora, and tricks the beast into slamming her head into the path. A few hours later, Goku wakes up, and the pair continue all the way to King Kai's planet without further interruption. Back on Earth, there was one interruption. Raditz had toured the planet from top to bottom, searching for clues towards the Dragon Balls. His search took him at one point to Penguin Village, where a certain inventor by the name of Senbei Norimaki had recalled a child who once carried a radar more advanced than anything he'd ever seen before, capable of locating these mystical orbs.
What was the name of the inventor again? Arale, do you remember?
Arale giggles to herself. She remembered, alright. The girl's name was pretty funny. Remember, Bulma means bloomers in Japanese. Arale might forget Goku and Super, but of course she remembers someone's name if it was also underwear. She was a gag character after all, what even is logic? After that encounter, Raditz asked elsewhere if they knew of a Bulma, and sure enough, Dr. Bulma Briefs was mentioned. Why, she's the daughter of the head of Capsule Corp in West City.
Right back where I started? Are you serious? No matter. I guess I can pick up my scouter along the way. Time to go see if the doctor is in.
And that is where we conclude things, for the time being. Considering Raditz survived the last part of the story due to the whole Rosaru thing, it was another chance for me to make him relevant for longer. But I didn't want to just turn him good again. I've got a whole other story for that, if you recall. Besides, with Gohan being too young to train, something has to take up the anime time. And why not have a new character visit all the iconic locations for the original series? The places Goku trained, where he met his friends, even where old enemies fell. That would have been an incredible love letter to the world that Toriyama created. It should be enjoyed before the series plunges into space, and never looks back again. So, I understand that this may not have turned out to be the continuation that @Jacob77445609 was hoping for on Twitter, but this Jacob hopes it was still interesting enough. The pace of the story won't be as slow all the time. You just want to add a bunch of stuff that needs to be detailed to be justified that I slow it down a bit. Jeez, I spent half of the series apologising, don't I? Good thing that next time I'm working on the most requested scenario from all of you that I've ever received. So stay tuned for that. In the meantime, let me know what you thought and either liking or disliking, and leaving your comments where the discussion could go. I'll see you all soon enough for another Butter Punch video. Toodle pip.